Welcome back, everyone, to Then and Now. I'm Julian Zelizer of The Long View.
And I'm Jonathan Alter of Old Goats.
You know, John, I was thinking of Thanksgiving and what we might talk about. And I remembered back in 2003, President George W. Bush, who was then leading the war in Iraq, made a surprise visit to the troops in Iraq. The troops didn't know about it. I think they thought Paul Bremer and some other officials were coming to speak to them in the Baghdad International Airport. And Bush showed up. Criticism about the war was starting to set in. The administration was thinking about the reelection campaign, and he goes and he really kind of not only shows his support but defends what the operation is about. And I was thinking how much changed soon after that as the criticism really mounted, as the war, which was only then starting to face insurgents, became pretty catastrophic in terms of its impact. Really changed American politics. It undermined a lot of international faith in the U.S. It opened up the Republican Party in ways that we are now seeing culminate with President Trump, and it just raised questions like Vietnam about the U.S. foreign policy in the aftermath of the horrific 9/11. So here we are, Thanksgiving many years later, different president. And what are your thoughts?
So it took a while before the disaster of that war sunk in. So in late 2003, we didn't quite know yet what a forever war was or what a disaster it would turn out to be. And so the following year, a year later, George W. Bush won re-election over John Kerry, but it was much closer than people remember. I remember when the exit polls came out, we all thought that Kerry was going to win, and if just a few thousand votes had shifted in Ohio, John Kerry would have been president. So that was an early sign that there were serious problems coming out of that war, which eventually led to 7,000 U.S. casualties and close to 1 million Iraqi and Afghan casualties. And I think it was, generally understood, and we were reminded of this when Dick Cheney just died, that basically Bush and Cheney had played a huge game of bait and switch. They made it seem like we needed to go into Iraq because of 9/11. And Saddam Hussein didn't have anything to do with 9/11. And it took the American people a while to catch on to that, but eventually they did, and Bush became very unpopular. And Obama, who had been against the war, beat Hillary Clinton in the 2008 primaries in part because of that difference between them. And a tremendous amount of bitterness resulted. And just very quickly, it makes it much harder for a president to use foreign policy to increase his popularity, which is something that throughout most of American history, there's been a rally around the flag quality to the public's reaction. If Trump tries to go into Venezuela, say, it's not going to work for him politically. Americans in both parties are still traumatized by those forever wars that George W. Bush started.
And just to add before we finish, the kind of absence of weapons of mass destruction, which had been the other premise of the war, undermined a lot of faith in similar ways to Vietnam of what government officials said. And
exactly,
all of this,
I believed. I mean, just very quickly, like it was the worst mistake of my career as a columnist. I was writing for Newsweek, and I believed Colin Powell when he said that there were weapons of mass destruction. And, so I signed off on that. I didn't have faith in Bush's leadership, but I had a lot of company in believing that even though there wasn't a connection to 9/11, that there was a WMD problem. We all turned out to be horribly wrong. And then they did terrible post-war planning. And, Powell had this Pottery Barn rule that he talked about. You break it, you own it. And that's what happened in the United States. We broke Iraq and we owned it.
That was then and now. Thanks for doing this, and we'll talk next week. Happy Thanksgiving, John, and to everyone else listening.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.